Live everywhere.
Daily Kos Radio on netrootsradio.com presents
David Walton. Kagro in the morning show. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It is Tuesday, October 25th, 2016. Apparently time to get going once again. Bill in Portland, Maine, on time as usual with his morning tweet. Daily Kos Radio with Kagro X. That's me, David Waldman. Is live now. It's like Trump TV minus the Trump and the TV and the stupid. Excellent. So far, pretty good. Blank slate here. We got plenty to talk about today, of course. Lots to catch up on. Some additional deplorableness? What would even be the word for it? Revealed overnight. Lots to catch up on that front. Of course, actual news brought to you later on by Greg Dworkin for the sane part of the audience. But if you need to catch up on the latest scandals, I got, 2, 3 of them to deal you this morning. We'll talk about each of them, of course, in turn. But I wonder, maybe if we just spit them out quick, then we can get on to some other stuff that's been waiting in the wings. There is, of course, a new installment in the continuing saga here on this show. Anyway, the narrative we're weaving together, along with, Swedish Jewfish's, we all knew about the trafficking story, the blockbuster story that we spent 2 hours on October 12th. If you are interested in diving back in the archives and finding that one. All, though, kicked off with, even the day we read Swedish Jewfish's diary, we started off with a somewhat shorter introductory backgrounder from Michael Gross. Was that one also in the Daily Beast? I can't remember exactly where he published that one. But he's got one today in the Daily Beast, which moves the ball forward a little bit more. Still waiting on parts 2, and if there are more, 3, 4, what have you, from Swedish Jewfish, who is involved in an extensive amount of research, writing, revision, and negotiation with other outlets as well, as I understand things. But more power to her there. I hope she can get a mainstream media audience hooked into this fascinating story. But Michael Gross has another deplorability. Thank you, Athena 5000, for chiming in with that one. We'll go with deplorability, and that's exactly what's contained in this piece. So I'll definitely share that one with you later on. I don't want to get in the way of Greg's roundup of what's actually happening in the race. But there's more than one new scandal story, I guess, today. They're, dropping out of the sky one at a time here. The one that fascinated me most last night, I think, another Daily Beast story. This is an older one. It was actually published back in January, but as you know, the primary opponents did not notice that Donald Trump had a rather sordid background and never thought to bring it up. I think they did. I think they were all hoping to duck his punches by not bringing it up. And good job. Excellent strategic work there, Republicans. Nice party you got there. This one, Donald Trump wanted vets kicked off Fifth Avenue. This one is really interesting, mostly because of the word we were just struggling with, deplorable. And I think we can actually just squeak this one in before we talk to Greg. But if not, I'm sure Greg would like to discuss this one for just a little bit. Donald Trump wanted vets kicked off Fifth Avenue. It's Michael Daly in the D-A-L-Y, in the D-A-I-L-Y Daily Beast. And he notes, of course, that this was published in late January. So the subheader here is, instead of debating his presidential rivals Thursday, the GOP frontrunner is hosting an event to raise money. That's interesting. He put that in scare quotes. He knew already he wasn't really raising money for veterans. That's rich. He's not. That's rich, say the disabled veterans he's trying to eject from the street outside Trump Tower. Full story. Now that he has balked at facing Megyn Kelly at the Republican debate, Donald Trump will be embracing heroes. By the way, do we all remember that that's why he skipped that debate and instead did the quote-unquote fundraiser, which is exactly how he got himself in trouble with David Farenthold, who was just trying to follow up on what happened to all that money he said he was raising and stumbled into the story, the enormously rich vein of the Trump Foundation that has made him a superstar. Why did it happen? Because Megyn Kelly was moderating the debate, and he had just done the whole, oh, she has blood coming out of her whatever story. He's got a lot. This is the candidate. I don't know if I've had a candidate mention the whatever so many times in a single campaign, actually. I mean, he didn't do all his mentioning, but it has not come up as an issue more than once, I don't think, for anybody. Anyway, I mean, I guess you could say it was an ongoing storyline for Bill Clinton, but not in the same way. Okay. So now that he's balked at facing Megyn Kelly, Donald Trump will be embracing heroes. Trump will host an event in Iowa to raise money for the veterans and wounded warriors who have been treated so horribly by our all-talk, no-action politicians, the Trump campaign announced. Remember when all the announcements began coming out in sort of in his voice. Never mind, and that's interesting too, that's something that's changed over time for the Trump campaign, where the goal was at first to make the spokespeople speak in Trump's voice. Then later on in the campaign, the goal of the professionals anyway was to please God, don't let anything go out in Trump's voice. The official stuff has to be done in an official voice. Anyway, never mind that for more than a decade, and just to set this up again, he's doing a fundraiser for veterans and wounded warriors, right? Never mind that for more than a decade, Trump sought to deprive veterans in need of their meager livelihood because he found them unsightly nuisances who should not be allowed anywhere near his gleaming headquarters on Fifth Avenue. The Trump who now extols veterans spent years clamoring for New York City's politicians to take action and ban even those street vendors with special disabled veterans licenses from the environs of Trump Tower. As was reported in the New York Daily News, Trump wrote in a letter to the New York State Assembly back in 1991, quote, while disabled veterans should be given every opportunity to earn a living, is it fair to do so to the detriment of the city as a whole or its tax-paying citizens and businesses? Side note, you're not a tax-paying citizen, even in 1991. Okay? I mean, it wasn't until 1995 that we found out that you were taking billion-dollar deductions, but we knew from your casino licenses you weren't a tax-paying citizen even then. He went on, do we allow Fifth Avenue, one of the world's finest and most luxurious shopping districts, to be turned into an outdoor flea market, clogging and seriously downgrading the area? Now, he was still at it in 2004. Note for the record, again, 1991, we are talking about, for the most part, pre-Iraq war, pre-Afghanistan war, where, even the first Iraq war had, I guess by 1991, depending on when he writes letters, there's not that much in the way of, there were, of course, a few, but we didn't really have much in the way of disabled veterans from the first Iraq war. So he is talking, generally speaking, about, unless there's a whole slew of disabled Grenada veterans that I don't know about, mostly talking about, I guess, Vietnam era, and of course there's always disabled veterans. We churn those out pretty regularly, but not in the same numbers. So this was before it was fashionable to be, saluting the flag and support the troops kind of stuff. There was a little bit of support the troops surrounding the first Gulf War, but nothing like we got in 2001 and on. But it doesn't matter, because in 2004, when the mania is fully upon us, he's still at it. He writes to Mayor Mike Bloomberg, and this is great, whether they are veterans or not, they, the vendors, should not be allowed to sell on this most important and prestigious shopping street. Imagine that, by the way, great free market answer for that one. You're not allowed to sell on this selling street. You're not prestigious enough. But get this. Whether they're veterans or not, they should not be allowed to sell on this most important and prestigious shopping street, Trump declared. He warned the image of New York City will suffer. And now, ready for it? I hope you can stop this very deplorable situation before it's too late. Deplorable, ladies and gentlemen. That's really what I wanted to get to here, and we could stop at this point. And Greg, you're welcome to come in at any point. I've gotten to what I wanted to. Trump called disabled veterans deplorables. The end. So enough of that talking point, although I'm happy to keep doing it. All the people who are thinking they're embracing it and taking the power of deplorables away from us by embracing it and putting it in your Twitter handles. Nope, I'm still happy to say you're deplorable in every way and fashion. I'm not going to stop, and I'm not wrong. Anyway, here comes Greg, and he can tell me about some of the things about which Armando will say he's wrong. How's that? Good morning, Greg. How are you?
Hey, good morning.
Yeah, it's been pretty good so far.
Yeah, I think so. Let's see. I'm trying to get my Skype thing here working, which is frozen at the moment, which is really too bad. But let me tell you some of the stuff that's on there. You were just talking about one scandal. Let's talk about another scandal.
Yes, let's do that.
Exclusive investigation in the Telegraph. Donald Trump faces foreign donor fundraising scandal. This was published on October 24.
That's real.
His presidential campaign is facing a fundraising scandal after a Telegraph investigation exposed how key supporters were prepared to accept illicit donations from foreign backers. Senior figures involved with the Great America PAC, one of the leading independent, that's scare quotes around independent, groups organizing TV advertisements and grassroots support for the Republican nominee, sought to channel $2 million from a Chinese donor into the campaign to elect the billionaire, despite laws prohibiting donations from foreigners. In return, undercover reporters purporting to represent the fictitious donor were assured that he would obtain influence if Mr. Trump made it to the White House.
So, what's great about it is quid pro quo on tape. That's
exactly.
Beautiful.
This is the quid pro quo that they were looking for.
So who did this? James O'Keefe?
No, a fellow named Investigations Team.
Oh, I thought James
Mr. Team apparently came up with this on their own without James O'Keefe.
I'm surprised James didn't get to this earlier because this is his M.O.
Last week, Eric Beach, the PAC's co-chairman, confirmed to the reporters at an event in Las Vegas that their client support would be remembered if Mr. Trump became president.
Remembered.
Yeah,
okay,
the
well,
disclosure raises questions about the origins of money being plowed into supporting Mr. Trump's candidacy. This is the Chinese connection. They haven't even gotten to the Russian connection yet.
Yeah, that's true. And but I mean, I guess I just once again would reemphasize how horrible he's been to the Chinese and how much he's denigrated everything. He paints them as the enemy.
That's the point of the money, right?
Yeah, right.
Now all of a sudden, he'll find them, friendly and comfortable and all that.
I guess so. Or he'll order Chinese food. And on Chinese New Year, he'll have that at the desk.
The revelations also highlight the apparent desperation of Mr. Trump's supporters to finance the final weeks of the campaign amid a series of controversies and polls showing him losing. In key states, the PAC consultant who brokered the deal proposed using as a conduit a type of organization he admitted is seen as being responsible for the dark money in politics.
Well, they are.
Undercover reporters, posing as consultants acting for a Chinese benefactor, approached specific pro-Trump and pro-Clinton fundraisers and groups after receiving information that individuals were involved in hiding foreign donations. The pro-Clinton organization did not respond, but earlier this month, an undercover reporter spoke by telephone to Eric Beach, co-chairman of the pro-Trump Great America PAC, which has the backing of Rudy Giuliani, one of Mr. Trump's most senior advisors, as well as the billionaire's son, Eric.
Ah, okay. Who's most senior? Is that by age? Is that what they mean?
I guess.
Okay.
The reporter said a Chinese client wished to donate to the PAC to support Mr. Trump's campaign. Mr. Beach appeared interested, despite raising concerns about his nationality and saying he would need to know the donor's identity. He said the donation could be put through a social welfare organization called a 501c4, which, unlike a PAC, is not subject to a blanket ban on receiving foreign money and not required to name donors. He stressed in an email that any path we recommend is legal. Now, if I recall, 501c3s can't lobby, but C4s can.
Yes, a certain amount, yes.
The reporter then received an email from Jesse Benton, a senior figure of the PAC, until being convicted in May in connection with buying a senator's endorsement on a prior campaign anyway.
Oops.
This is a delicious story. He said he was a consultant and that Mr. Beach had not wanted a paper trail. He and the PAC later denied he had worked for it at all.
Yeah. Me too.
It didn't happen because I said so.
I don't know him.
I'm going to do this one for you for the details, but I just wanted to throw that in there.
That's a good one.
It's a good one.
I mean, it's got everything, and my favorite aspect of it is that it's James O'Keefe's M.O., but you'll never find James O'Keefe, who's dedicated to doing exactly this, to expose the reality of politics. The fact that, you could have Donald Trump, who's such a juicy figure on the graft front, not be targeted by this. I mean, in case there was anybody out there, no, there's nobody in this audience that doesn't know exactly what James O'Keefe is about. But the fact that this had to be done by, one, a news organization, a real one, and two, a foreign one at that, is, well, that's a big part of the story in my view.
Well, there is some
down the end of that.
there are some fun polls this morning.
Yes. Okay.
And there are some interesting polls this morning. And sometimes they're the same and sometimes they're not. For example, we have the IBD TIP presidential election tracking poll. As you know, this is one of the few that have been very favorable to Trump, where Trump campaign says, look, we're winning. Okay. Oh, what have we here? Clinton today, 42, Trump 41. So for the first time in a long time, in fact, since they started the poll, Clinton is actually ahead. And we have a nice explainer, by the way, about how the IBD TIP poll works from Scott Clement, pollster over at the Washington Post, who looks at some of the trackers and how the trackers differ from the Real Clear Politics average.
Okay.
That's what they use. And like the CNN poll that came out yesterday with +6 for Clinton in the head-to-head and +5 in the four-way, it's not about the likely voter compared to the registered voter model in the CNN poll. They were virtually identical. There's a 1-point difference. Rather, it's how they weight who is actually in the poll itself. The IBD survey uses their own partisan breakdown of registered voters. And they won't tell you what it is because they say it's proprietary.
That's always bad news when they won't tell you what it is. I mean, I understand the proprietary thing, but...
Well, let me read you the exact paragraph. It's kind of interesting. A second unique aspect of IBD TIP's weighting is party identification, where the survey sample of registered voters is weighted to match a predetermined estimate for the share of self-identified Democrats, Republicans, Independents, and others. The pollster declined to provide detail on the source of party ID, describing them as proprietary, although weighting sources are a required element of disclosure for the American Association for Public Opinion Research.
Okay.
That's the overall polling organization that gives you the good stamp of, yeah, you did it right. And the funny thing is, we all know that party ID is a variable. It'll change. You can't weight it to various what you think it's going to be benchmarks because that doesn't exist. It's a fiction.
Yeah.
It changes because people change their mind about, who they're going to vote for. And they're going to change their mind about their party. If they're unhappy with Trump, they're going to call themselves independent. It varies. It is a variable. So right there, don't pay too much attention to the IBD TIP poll. The other thing that's really nice about the Scott Clement article is he dug up this graph that I remembered in my head, but I couldn't find anywhere. And actually, my old friend Mark Blumenthal did this from Pollster.com back in 2008. And if you scroll down the Scott Clement piece, you'll see right there what he did is he took the Pollster national trend in 2008 and compared it to the IBD TIP tracker back from 2008. This is the election where IBD TIP got the McCain-Obama race just about correctly on the last day.
Okay.
And therefore claimed it was the most accurate pollster.
Yeah.
But if you look at the graph from October 13th through Election Day, they were way off. Only on the last day did they correct to match what everybody else was saying.
You should...
Can you see that graph there?
Let me see. Where did you put this one?
Let me just give it to you at the end so it's easier for you to find.
There aren't that many. I don't think you've sent that many pictures today.
Nope, there it is. I sent you something wrong. Here, let me do this.
I'd like to see this. So, because that's a great...
It's the very, very last thing I just sent you. And you scroll down about 2/3 of the way, and it'll pop right up a red and blue graph.
Okay. Oh, yeah.
See it?
Yes.
And what you see in the graph is that the Obama lead grows from about mid-September to a tie, from a tie to about 7.5 point lead. And starting on October 13th, when IBD TIP started to do their tracker, they were all over the place.
Yeah.
There were plenty of times in the month of October where they had Obama leading by 1 when everybody else had his lead as 6.
Yeah.
And that continues literally until the last day.
Yeah.
All of a sudden it pops up.
That's
says,
an amazing
we're tied
scam.
with everybody else.
What a great idea.
Yeah. So Mark Blumenthal I remember this, seeing it at the time, and every time somebody says IBD tip was the most accurate pollster, I look at it and say, not if you were trying to track the race, figuring out what was going on, they weren't.
Yeah. I mean, that's a claim that you can actually kind of almost stand by, because very few people are going to, unless they remember day to day, as you do.
It ticked Mark off, so I remember him doing this graph and saying, wait a minute, folks.
Wow. Because you could, I mean, like I said, for most people, you could absolutely get away with that and just show them the last day results. And most people would assume, well, you were
accurate the entire way.
Or you're close to it. Everybody showed a pretty steady and tight race, so surely you also did. And since you were closest at the end, you were probably closest all the way through. So you can literally just, I guess that's the new Rasmussen thing, where they used to do the saturation polling to make sure that they would get headlines. And now
so I
Asked
asked Natalie Jackson, who runs the Huffington Post pollster. She's the chief pollster there now that Mark's moved on to SurveyMonkey. And I said, how do you handle all of these late entry tracking polls that try to flood the zone with garbage? And she didn't say they were garbage. What she did say is, well, we have the same method we have used ever since Mark was here. If you have a 3-day tracker, then we'll list it every 4th day, so that whatever we list is completely new data. If you have a 5-day tracker, we'll list it every 6th day. So every time we list it, it's completely new data compared to the last one. We started doing that with Gallup back in the day, and we've continued with all the other trackers.
Okay.
So unlike Real Clear Politics, which lists the polls every single day, and you have no idea whether they're putting in the average or not, they have a calculated method of adding it, which seems fair, over at Huffington Post Poster. One of the reasons why that's my go-to site, not Real Clear Politics. But I mentioned Real Clear Politics because everybody else seems to use it for reasons which I am not clear on. It's unclear politics.
Okay.
Anyway, so you have the IBD tip poll for the first time giving Clinton a lead. For the second day in a row, the USC LA Times poll, which Trump loves to cite, is giving Clinton a 1-point lead. Rasmussen came out this morning. They give Clinton a 1-point lead. And that means that there is no poll currently that has Trump in the lead. None. Wow. He used to cite those 3 because he loved those 3. They're gone. Oh, by the way, ABC News now has a tracker that they do every day. And it hasn't changed. Today it's still plus 12 for Clinton. But they have this terrific graph, which I think I sent you. Vote preference among college-educated white women.
All right.
And Clinton is leading Trump with them 63-30. That's the second most fun thing about that graph.
Okay.
I think that was the first graph way up at the
all right.
The top there.
The second one here.
You can find it. It's got a blue heading. It's a vote preference, college-educated white women.
Okay. I'll just look around for some white women.
Yeah. Find it?
I got one. All right, let's see. Here's your Tuesday. Start off. Okay, the first graphic. Let's see. It takes a while. Skype sometimes. There we go. Okay, here we are. College-educated white women.
Open it up.
Got it.
Okay, you see the graph?
Yes.
Among college-educated white women, likely voters.
Yeah.
Tell me how Jill Stein is polling.
Oh, I have to read it. Today?
Yeah.
Or as close today. That looks like, if I'm squinting right, 0.
That is correct.
Okay. I'm trying to see. Maybe there's some
0 votes among college-educated white women. Now, somebody tell me what her base is supposed to be.
Well, I would have guessed college-educated white women.
I would have guessed that too.
Huh.
Gary Johnson's got 4. She's got 0. Trump's got 30, and Clinton's got 63.
It's amazing that Gary Johnson has any, and she doesn't. I mean, you certainly could have convinced me without data that it was the reverse. That Gary Johnson was a 0 and Jill Stein was a 4.
Right, that's what I would have suspected. But no, that's not what it shows here. And the ABC Washington Post write-up points out Hillary Clinton is at a peak among college-educated white women, leading Trump by 63-30. That far surpasses the best exit poll result among this group by a Democrat in the past 36 years, which was Al Gore winning him by 8 over George Bush in 2000. Clinton is 19 points ahead in overall among white college graduates, a group no Democrat presidential candidate, I think they meant Democratic, right?
Yes.
Presidential candidate has won an exit poll since 1980.
Wow. That's really remarkable. I mean, I guess, thinking about the Gary Johnson thing, I guess I understand where it makes sense. I guess among college-educated liberal white women,
who know where Aleppo is.
Yeah, right. So, wow. So Jill Stein. Okay. Well, not a good showing.
I didn't expect that.
I didn't expect 0.
Back in June, she was at 9%.
Yeah. So it would appear. When there was still room for exploration, let's say.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, 0. And it's been 0 for a little while. I mean, I guess this poll doesn't go that far back. 0, 0, the last two. There's 1022 and 1023. That fooled me. That's a bad axis.
Yeah, well, that's their tracking poll.
Yeah, that's just the dates. Those are not not to scale.
But it was 1% back in September.
Yeah.
It was 2% back in August, so 5% in July. So she hasn't been effective since July, which is about right.
These are
isn't that where she started going to the wrong city when she was campaigning?
Maybe. Yeah, this looks like the milk shelf, actually. 2%, 1%, 0%. There you go.
Yeah, there you go.
I see.
All right. This is a piece from Mark Caputo, Florida. It's in Politico today. Florida spirals away from Trump, with the GOP nominee trailing in poll after poll, lacking a ground game. A low turnout may be Trump's only hope. Okay. She's trailed Hillary Clinton in 10 of the 11 public polls conducted in October. And Ryan Tyson, Vice President of Political Operations for the Associated Industries of Florida, a business group, conservative-leaning.
Terrible name.
On the presidential race, we found Clinton with a consistent 3 to 5 point lead in surveys that attempt to reflect Florida's actual electorate.
What does that mean?
Well, though Clinton's, again, if you're going to model the actual electorate, who do you think is going to show up?
Well, what do the Associated Industries people think?
They think that we would suggest 3% really isn't as close as it may seem. And they think, in all reality, they say it's going to be a landslide.
Oh, well, all right. They may very well be right. It's not. I just found that name a little odd too. Well, the Associated Industries of what sort of association would they be? Is this the Chamber of Commerce or no?
Maybe confusing them with the Amalgamated Industries Group.
Maybe I don't know.
Florida Chamber of Industries or some of the other groups there. But anyway, whatever they do.
Well, sounds like they have their
here's
hands on
data. Florida Republicans had cast fewer than 42% of the more than 1.2 million absentee ballots as of Monday morning. Democrats had cast 40, and that 1.7% lead is in the GOP's favor. It's greatly reduced since the same period in 2012 when Republicans outpaced Democrats by 5 points.
All right.
But Trump says the numbers are looking phenomenal in Florida. They are, but for
yes, that's true. Well, you can't catch him on that.
So that's an important swing state. North Carolina is also something we've been tracking in the early voting, and there's conflicting data there because of two reasons. On the one hand, the early vote for Democrats, including mailed-in ballots, have been better than it was in 2012 in regard to where the Republicans stand compared to themselves. That is to say, everything is down a little bit compared to 2012, but the drop for Republicans was greater than the drop for Democrats. Fine. But that's contrasted and countermanded by the fact that because of moves to make voting machines almost impossible to get to in 4-hour lines and so on and so forth, early in-person voting has not been as robust for Democrats as it was in 2012. So where does all of that stand? There's a new Upshot Siena poll from the New York Times this morning. Remember, that's the one that uses voter rolls. And then in a previous iteration threw it out to the pollsters and said, you all have the raw data, see what you come out with in terms of adjusting it, which was a fascinating exercise. And whereas they had it basically tied the last time they did it, now it's Clinton leads by 7.
Oh, that's a different story.
That is a very, very big deal.
Yes, ask Joe
in fact,
Biden.
It's 8 in the two-way race.
Okay. And
49-41. They also have Cooper over McCrory for governor, 51-45, and they have Ross over Burr by 1 point. So that Senate race is going to be very close. It's interesting because other polls, like the Monmouth poll that came out the other day, found it a much closer race. Clinton's still in the lead, and the speculation from PPP polling, which also found a smaller but durable Clinton lead, is that McCrory had helped himself by how he governed during the hurricane.
Oh,
and some sympathy points for that, which may be wearing off.
Could be. I didn't see anything remarkably competent about, but I didn't see any deplorable incompetence either. Mass waves of refugees getting no help, hot bottled water for babies. Okay, so I guess that counts as.
It counts. The write-up says the poll is their best live interview survey in North Carolina so far this month. In general, it's better to look at an average of polls than any single survey. But the Upshot Siena poll is hardly alone in suggesting Mrs. Clinton has an advantage. On average, she has led by 3 points in North Carolina so far this month.
Okay.
And she's gaining everywhere according to the poll numbers.
Yeah, take a break. Woo. It's cold and flu season.
Yep.
As you know.
It puts her just slightly behind President Obama 4 years ago and brings her support closer to the performance of down-ballot Democrats who outpaced her by a much larger margin among the voters a month ago. She gained 3 points among white voters to a degree, now holds 42% of the white college-educated vote to Mr. Trump's 40, again, an area where she's winning white college-educated vote. Not normally something that goes to the Democrat. And Mr. Trump's weakness among these voters is the main reason he's underperforming Mr. Romney, who won white voters with a degree by more than 20 points.
Yeah.
That's pretty good. She's gained 9 points among non-white voters. The gap between registered and likely voters has dissipated. Again, likely and registered voter numbers, just this, the four-way versus three-way numbers, are really not all that different. So it really doesn't matter which one you pick. Used to be you had to decide which one you were going to go with.
No longer true.
Right. Anyway, just a quick rundown. Latest polls. Monmouth, Clinton +1. PPP, Clinton +3. Civitas, Clinton +2. Survey USA, Clinton +2. CNN, Clinton +1. And the CNN poll had a big difference between likely voters and registered voters. Registered voters were very solidly for Clinton, like by 7. Likely voters by 1. And that was back mid-October. Washington Post Survey Monkey, Clinton +6. Emerson, Clinton +4. Emerson, remember, only uses landlines. Marist, Clinton +4. So, she's doing great in North Carolina. If she wins North Carolina and Florida, of course, the election's over. And that's why it's so silly to hear some of these people track, like on Morning Joe today. Well, if, he only did this much better in this and that much better in that, and then we can get it down to 3. And once he's at 3, we can get it to 1, and therefore, there's 2 weeks left.
Yeah.
She is actually setting up a landslide.
It certainly sounds that way. I have noticed that on Twitter that Dave Weigel, I guess, has spent some time in the ground game operations centers for the Trump campaign around the country, watching the people being trained for their GOTV activities.
Which, is that the same as Trump TV?
No, actually, but I guess in the end, the audience will likely be the same. But yeah, I've just been watching his observations he's in a call center somewhere, and it's like one retiree being taught how to use a phone,
Well, it's a rotary phone, so you can't text.
They know how to do that.
What's texting?
Yeah, right. No, they've handed them a cell phone, and the picture, I think they took a stock photo to illustrate it, but it was perfect. A guy like with his raising his glasses up so he can stare down because he doesn't have bifocals at a cell phone that he doesn't quite understand. But all right, well, they're working hard. And
do you remember the old Cary Grant, Rosalind Russell movie, His Gal Friday?
The title I remember.
That's an old black and white movie, of course. And Cary Grant is the publisher, and Rosalind Russell is the ace reporter who has to get all the scoops and competes with all the male reporters and beats them to it because she's really good. But there's all these scenes in the movie with the old phone that looks like kind of a little lamppost, and you pick up the receiver, which is on a line that leads to the stump that you're holding with your other hand. Those kinds of phones from the 30s.
Ah, yeah.
And that kind of picture because they have all these pictures of reporters, like 8 or 9 of them lined up trying to make a scoop all at the same time. That would be a great picture to put at one of those Trump get out the vote.
Right,
this is what it looks like at Trump headquarters when we're trying to get people out to vote.
See, the problem is I can't.
You can't text with this kind of phone either, by the way.
I can't crank the phone with my arthritis.
I can't do it fast
enough.
enough.
I don't do that anymore. Oh.
Get some young whippersnapper in here to crank the phone.
Yep.
Is this ageism? It is not. I am 62 years old, and I am unfortunately in the group, in the cohort of the electorate that happens to be most Trump.
All right. So
I can't figure it out. It's my cohort's fault. So let's be clear about that. Anyway, how is all of this playing down ballot? New report from Jennifer Duffy, October 25th, from the Cook Report. Senate Democrats poised to pick up 5 to 7 seats.
Okay.
5 to 7 seats.
That is Senate?
Senate.
Okay. House. Like, oh, wow. What a surprise.
House, Stu Rothenberg says 15 to 20.
Okay. That's better.
Not enough to keep the House, not enough to tip the House, but enough to make it totally unfunctional for Paul Ryan.
Well,
because you got to figure, if you pick up 20 seats, what you've done is you've knocked out all the moderates, like Charlie Dent, and you've left him with an entire cohort of Ted Yohos.
That's, on average, that'll likely be the result of that.
That's where we're going to need your expertise. What the heck does he do? How long does he last, in other words?
Doesn't. I mean, I don't know who they would replace him with. There's a possibility he remains in the speakership because nobody wants to take it.
Will we see that, picking on your expertise here in terms of process? And boy, has it been a long time since we talked about process in the House. That's how wacky this election has been. Let's say Clinton wins.
Okay.
Let's say it's a relative landslide. Let's say the Democrats take the Senate with a 2-seat extra margin. And let's say they take 20 seats in the House, not enough to make Pelosi the Speaker, but enough to make Paul Ryan's life miserable. What can happen in terms of leadership process in the lame duck session between the end of the election and before the next Congress comes in?
Well,
what are the options?
If they're trying to get something done, or are they? Or
can they throw Paul Ryan out? Can they just decide that they want to? I mean, how does that work?
This will be the time when they really begin to decide what they want to do about leadership, because that's a day one of the new House decision. So January 3rd, or unless that's a Saturday or Sunday, right thereabouts, they'll make their decision. And although sometimes they'll, if it's an awkward time, they'll gavel in and then come back for a first day of the session. But the first working day of the session, they've got to decide who the speaker is, because the House reconstitutes itself entirely. So there's no speakership. There are no members of the House on day one, and that's why they're all sworn in by the clerk. He's the only permanent officer of the House. So even when you're working with a stable leadership, the Speaker has to be reelected. So there's going to be a vote, and so November and December is the time when people who think they might be able to stab the current Speaker in the back and take his job begin maneuvering. So, I guess if it's really close and there is a Republican majority, the Freedom Caucus types will begin flexing their muscles to see. Well, they'll immediately announce whether they know how they're going to do, or what chances they have or not. They'll immediately start announcing we're going to challenge him, and then it's a question of, does anybody take this seriously? And I guess the next dynamic is nobody wants Paul Ryan to continue as Speaker of the House, and neither does Paul Ryan really want to continue as Speaker of the House. But ultimately he'll hold on to any title he can get. But no one else wants it either, because it's a disaster of a job. I mean, he's miserable in this job now. If he wins, if the Republicans pick up 10 seats, he'll be miserable in this job.
So he could resign. Right after the election, if he chose.
He could, sure. I mean, he could resign now if he wants to, but...
Right, so that could happen. There's no mechanism for picking a different speaker if he doesn't resign until the new House reconstitutes.
Right, no, I don't think there would be any reason for him to... If he were inclined to resign, I would think he would, empty out the minibar and just hang out until January 3rd and then be, I'm out of here.
I'm just trying to understand the mechanisms. Even if he did resign and somebody else was elected,
Yeah.
it wouldn't matter because then they have to do the whole thing over again
Yes.
on January 3rd, right?
Right. True. Yes. The whole thing starts over again in January. The House,
Regardless of what they do in the lame duck.
right.
Only thing lame duck is for is announcing things publicly to put pressure on this, that, or anything else.
Yeah.
That's the only reason to do it.
And then you start counting your votes, and the way we'll know whether anything after the fact, if a new speaker were selected, the way we will figure out whether this is a sea change in the way Republicans are doing business or more of the same. I mean, new face, they say it's a revolution, but it's all going to end up the same way, as whether or not they use the same, what is essentially the same method of selecting a new speaker or any leader of any kind, or they come up with a new way. The best predictor in both parties always for any leadership position, high, low, or in the middle, is how much money has the candidate's leadership PAC or campaign PAC directly, if necessary, given out to other members. If you count up it's quick and dirty, and you can refine the count by counting only people who won and so are there in the House to cast a vote, but that's more work than is necessary. Just look at the raw dollars and over how much time have they been giving it out, and almost every time, 99% plus, the winner of the leadership election, either party, any job, is the one who's given out more dollars total to other members or candidates for the House, and that's it. That's all there is to it. Ideology doesn't appear to matter. Friendships don't appear to matter. There's no, that's why they tell you to get a dog in Washington. Doesn't matter what caucus you're in, whether you're Freedom Caucus or Tuesday Group or whatever the hell you want. It all comes down to dollars. And if they were to elect either a new speaker or even middle leadership, if somebody wins because they marshal Freedom Caucus and Tea Party votes and leverage that against a mainstream, rhino cuck Republican, as they like to say, who gave out more money, then something's different. But
so just a reminder for those of you listening to get latest polling numbers and how the election is going. The real strength of Kagro in the morning is figuring out the process and the policies about what happens after. We're stuck with whatever happens during the election. And then we have to make some sense out of it. So don't go away after the election just because it's over. Come back and find out what's going on, really.
Yeah, and that's another thing to do, too. If you're interested in who's going to be running, the reporters will want to look at flight manifests. Who's come back to D.C. in December after they adjourn or as they're really getting ready to adjourn. Who's back early? Who's making calls? So that'll tell you who's maneuvering for those leadership positions. Right.
Two last pieces to leave you with as I sign off here. One is from the AP, Trump brand loses luster with affluent. Event planners have had enough with Donald Trump after his 2005 hot mic boast about groping women. I have to point out something that friends have pointed out on Twitter. The reason that Trump's hotels are not getting booked is partially because there's a girl cut. Not a boycott, but a girl cut. A lot of the event planners are women. A lot of the people who book these big gala events, with hundreds of people, thousands of people, are women, and they are not going to be having Trump on their list of hotels to call.
No, they're embarrassed to even suggest it to their clients, who are in the main women as well. Yes, the marriage, if it's a heterosexual marriage, I guess we have to check ourselves on these things. Usually at that point, in those arrangements, very often the groom's sort of whatever you want, in terms of the venue, and the brides are not in the main selecting Trump properties. Now, I would think that probably it's not even being suggested for same-sex marriages very often either. How would you like to do this at the Trump Plaza?
Or conferences or many of the other large-scale booking things that are being done.
Yeah, pretty much. I would think that that would be a no-no, and that would hurt him huge in Las Vegas, too.
Even charity events are shying away from Mar-a-Lago now.
Yeah, and good reason, too, because it's in a shambles, I understand. It's $17 million in damage.
Yeah, to the front door or something. But
we'll
the fact of the matter is that
that's
happening. And then the last piece here is from First Read this morning, reality check on Trump's poll numbers, giving a shout-out to Ron Brownstein, who wrote back in January before the Iowa and New Hampshire contests, Republicans are growing comfortable with the prospect of Trump winning the party nomination, even as resistance to him is solidifying among the voters he would need to win the general election. So they're making a point, if the polls are rigged against Trump, they've been rigged all year, they give some numbers. This is January 2016 compared to now in the NBC Wall Street Journal poll. Okay, unfavorable numbers. Women, then 68, now 62. Latinos, then 69, now 80. African Americans, then 81, now 87. Age 18 to 34, then 72, now 70. Independents, then 52, now 61. Suburban voters, then 55, now 59. They're not all that different, but the point is, this is what they've been, and he hasn't done anything to change those numbers.
All right. Well,
you can't win if 6 in 10 women, 7 in 10 young voters, 8 in 10 Latinos, and 9 in 10 African Americans have an unfavorable view of you.
Yes. And, golly, that's unfortunate for him.
Yeah, it is. And that's why we are where we are. So with that, that's my summary for today. Thanks so much for listening, folks. This is Greg Dworkin speaking with my friend Kagro in the morning, David Waldman. And again, a reminder, there's going to be a lot to follow after the election, so don't give up on the show just on November 9th. Come back and listen, and David, not me, will tell you what the hell's going on with Congress, because I don't know.
Yeah, well, we won't know then either, likely, but we'll enjoy.
But we'll start to see tea leaves. We'll look at those flight registries. We'll look and see who's making noise, who's not. Paul Ryan has got to have a major league migraine.
Yes.
That's got to last until he's done with his speakership. How bad does it get? We'll see.
Blow out from the inside.
Yeah, something like that.
Okay.
All righty. Take care. Talk to you tomorrow.
Okay. Thanks very much, Greg. A great start to the day. Let's see. We can jump right in on a couple of these things. Let's see. Anything that just broke while I was looking on Twitter. A couple of things sort of caught my eye and I got distracted. But okay. Let's jump right back into the Donald Trump deluge, I guess. Let's see if there's anything else that really needs to be extracted from this article about his insistence on removing the disabled veterans selling their wares on Fifth Avenue. See if there's anything else we can mine from this one. But the key point, of course, was... oh, look at this. Well, Albert Titus has some news for us here via Ed O'Keefe. And that is Trump holding a rally at his Doral, Florida golf course with his employees, which is not surprising, except that it's kind of like, wow. Maybe that means that's what he's down to in terms of support in Florida, or he's trying to bolster the crowd. That's not terribly unusual, but of course the comment is the key here. Vote for me and you'll get paid. That's finally, you'll get your... I wonder how he's doing paying paychecks on some of those. I guess people walk after a while if you don't do regular paychecks for people who are functionary down there. I don't know if it's the same thing on his campaign, though. All right, let's see. What is this? Oh, this is an interesting thing, too. Let's take... Well, you know what? I'll hold on to this one because that would represent a shift I'm not quite ready to make. So let me save this comment from Ballerina X, another of our loyal listeners out there. Okay, well, let's continue on with the Daily Beast piece about Fifth Avenue and remind everybody this is the one in which, in 2004, in a letter to Mike Bloomberg, Donald Trump calls disabled veterans deplorable, or rather, the situation in which they are permitted to sell things on a shopping street, which is pretty disgusting if you think about it. The image of New York City, he thinks, will suffer. I hope you can stop this very deplorable situation before it's too late. Too funny that it's deplorable. I knew that word rang a bell, he says. The state legislature had originally accorded a special vendor's license to disabled veterans in the aftermath of the Civil War. This is how long we're talking about in terms of since when did New York City allow disabled veterans special dispensation to sell goods as street vendors? Well, since the Civil War. But, Donald Trump, not real happy about that. In other words, by the way, the disabled veterans that he wants ejected from the prestigious shopping district of Fifth Avenue, which, by the way, I don't know. I'm not that familiar with Fifth Avenue. Trump Tower is on Fifth Avenue. I know that much. And certainly everyone knows the fame of Fifth Avenue. Is Trump Tower, is it the heart of Fifth Avenue, or is it, one rotten end of Fifth Avenue? I don't know. I mean, he bought prestigious property, right? It was the Bonwit Teller building, so that was certainly a shopping district. I really don't know. I'm not that familiar. Anyway, I guess what I was going to say here, though, was the veterans have a legit claim to saying we were here first. It's not like we came in and screwed up your whole Trump Tower thing. We've been here since forever, and you came in here and decided you wanted it fancier. So fine, terrific, but we were already here. Doesn't matter to Donald Trump, of course. Anyway, so this goes on since the Civil War. Trump and other moneyed folks were not able to get the vendors banned, but the authorities did cap the total number of veterans with special licenses and restrict the number who could work on particular streets at a given time. The ultimate sop to the 1%, of course. Peddlers were largely banned from Fifth Avenue, but they continued to sell their wares on the side streets. On Wednesday, they included 48-year-old Sean Williams. This goes back to, I guess, back in January. Is that when we said this was? Who served in the U.S. Army from 1987 to 1992 and now sells hats and scarves on East 43rd Street, just off Fifth Avenue. I was going to re-enlist, but I had kids, he said. Williams has been supporting his family by peddling for the past 12 years, commencing around the time Trump wrote the mayor to say vets should not be allowed to sell on his street. Williams had no trouble characterizing Trump's efforts. Despicable, deplorable is the word you're looking for. He never served, and not his kids. That is also true. Williams uttered another word when he learned that Trump was using veterans event to offset his absence from Thursday's Republican debate. Wow, and that's not even the word I might have guessed he used. 2 blocks uptown at East 45th Street, just off Fifth Avenue. And before I actually even continue with this, let me remind you once again that there was every chance that Donald Trump was never going to give that money to anybody at all, unless it was to benefit himself through the Trump Foundation, unless David Farenthold started calling and asking, so what veterans charities are you donating to? Can we talk to some of them and find out what they're doing with the money? Oh, and at that point he realizes, oh God, I have to give this money out. And remember, that's how that unfolded. We've almost forgotten, I think, in the avalanche of other ridiculous stories about Donald Trump, but the avalanche of ridiculous stories about his charitable giving, which doesn't exist, has buried that essential fact, I think, at this point, that he may never have given that money to anyone unless David Farenthold asked, what'd you do with it? And in particular, the way he did. I think probably other people asked that question. No one asked it as doggedly, and no one sought to find an answer despite his stonewalling the way he did. Anyway, back to the story here. 2 blocks uptown at East 45th Street, just off Fifth Avenue, Annette Seck was also selling hats and scarves. Everyone loves hats and scarves. She served in the Army from 1980 to 1985. I'm saluting extra because that's Ronald Reagan's Army. Talk about Private Benjamin, she laughed. Her son, now 27, also served in the Army and was deployed to Iraq. He returned with no physical wounds, thank God. He's all right, I think, she reported. Physical wounds, that's one thing. We all have to look out for PTSD. She worries that the war might have had unseen effects. It did. I'm looking at him hard, she said. Her other worry is the business. And surely Donald Trump can sympathize with the business worries, yes? The hyper-luxury enterprises such as Tiffany's might be booming, but sidewalk stands that cater to the less wealthy, 99%, that is the rest of us, are way down. And maybe that's not the spot for you. Not because Donald Trump wants you gone, but because you need to go where your clients are. This is the worst year ever, she lamented. The money's not there. People aren't buying like they used to. She is aware of Trump's efforts to chase the peddlers from the street. She counts the continued presence of her and her comrades as a defeat for the Donald. He lost because of veterans in the street, she said. She then pondered the possibility of victories for the Donald, not just in the primaries, but in the general election. If he gets elected, I'll die, she said simply. Well, he'll certainly sweep her off the street, that's for sure. Up on East 51st Street, just off 5th Avenue and across from St. Patrick's Cathedral, another hat and scarf vendor had a disabled American veteran sign on his cart. He declined to give his name or particulars, because Donald Trump will have him killed. But he was quick to offer a word of his own regarding Trump hosting a veterans event on Thursday night. Disgusting. He uses that word a lot. Disgusting. She's disgusting. You're all disgusting. Anyway, he was understandably dubious of Trump's newfound fondness for those who served. Now he's different, the peddler said. He's born again. And that has 800 meanings. The peddler did not expect that this born-again Trump would now favor allowing disabled vets to sell their wares on the Golden Avenue where his tower stands. First-class war vets, second-class back at homes, the peddler said. Then he added, go take a picture of the planters. He meant the large cement planters that Trump had placed outside the tower, not to ward off possible terrorists, but to keep away peddlers. As has been reported by the New York Times, Trump had used somewhat smaller planters to fill a marble bench in a stretch of the lobby that was ceded to the public in exchange for him being allowed to build 20 stories higher than zoning would otherwise have allowed. You remember that story? We talked about that and the public-private partnerships that created these pseudo-public spaces like Zuccotti Park, where they had the Occupy protest. We remember this because he kept closing the lobby of Trump Tower for his press conferences, and legally he's not supposed to be able to do that except on very limited number of occasions per year because he asked for a variance. They said you can only build X number of floors. He wanted to build 20 more stories, and the deal was worked out. We'll let you do that if you create a nice public space in the lobby. And apparently, I guess, there are marble benches where yucky people are allowed to come in and sit for several hours a day if they wish. And so he decided, well, maybe if we swap out the benches for planters, it's still just decoration, but nobody can sit on them. Perfect. He just loves the vets, I guess. Okay, so onward with this story. City officials noted that the planters on the bench prevented the public from sitting there. Trump responded with a 1984 letter that presaged the ones he would write regarding disabled vet vendors. Quote, we have had tremendous difficulties with respect to the bench. Drug addicts, vagrants, etc. have come to the atrium in large numbers, Trump wrote in the letter. Have they? That's interesting. Why are vagrants and drug addicts so attracted to Trump Tower? What's going on in Trump Tower that has them so interested? I don't know. Anyway, additionally, all sorts of horrors, that's what he wrote, had been taking place that effectively ruined the beautiful ambiance of the space which everyone loves so much. Now, surely the horrors show up in the police blotter reports, yes? Or I suspect that the horrors are, I saw an ugly person. Terrible. That is horrible. I feel bad for all these guys. The city fined Trump, who cares, who subsequently removed the bench altogether. He replaced it with an elegant, that's what it says, version of a hats and scarves stand, such as disabled vets might set up on Fifth Avenue if they were allowed. The Trump Store, the sign reads. One item that no self-respecting disabled vet peddler would stock was on display on Wednesday afternoon. Trump's book, Crippled America. That's a nice shot at the disabled vets. Vet peddlers who were crippled in service of America would likely only shake their heads on seeing the rest of the title, How to Make America Great Again. One disabled veteran who has been sidelined by medical troubles in recent days is Dondy McKellar. He was in the Navy during the 1980s, serving aboard the USS Boulder. He has been selling bubble blowers in the street since 2004. Everybody got their own thing, but bubbles make me happy, he told the Daily Beast on Wednesday evening. McKellar is the chairman of the Veterans Committee at the Street Vendors Project and an active participant in the effort by Veterans for Veterans to relax current regulations. The idea is to restore fully the promise the New York State Legislature made in 1894 that disabled veterans would be free to sell goods on the street. We're a part of why we have the freedom we have, McKellar noted. This country we serve should give us the opportunity to come out and vend. He wishes big business folks were able to recognize the vendors as fellow business folks. No, too disgusting. We have to start somewhere, McKellar said. Meanwhile, people in New York should keep an eye out for the yellow licenses or the blue licenses that signal a vendor is a disabled veteran. Did Trump ever do any episodes of I never watched The Apprentice, so I'm not real familiar with what the tasks often were, but I got the sense, I thought, in seeing clips in passing, did they ever do street sales, street vending? That would be awfully ironic if that were the case. Anyway, so you should, if you are in New York, keep an eye out for those yellow and blue licenses that signal a vendor is a disabled vet. I would appreciate it, McKellar said. All my fellow veterans would as well, if that would give you a reason to come over. He figures we should all rejoice at the thought of disabled veterans struggling to make their way on the same block as Trump Tower. I agree. That's a great thought. It's what makes America great. Again, I guess you might add. We have such a great variety of everything, McKellar said. He does not expect that the day will come when Trump would welcome him. He wouldn't have liked me in front of his establishment, McKellar said. He suspects Trump might be that rare person who proves immune to the charm of his bubbles, which seem to make almost everybody smile. If he gets upset with my bubbles, McKellar began. McKellar then said, he got upset with Megyn Kelly, so I don't put it past him. That's a good way of wrapping it up. Well done for giving us that exit, Mr. McKellar. All right. Well, he certainly is a piece of work, let's say, Donald Trump is. There are other fun items we might add here. I wanted to take a look, though. Right up at the top of that Daily Beast piece, there was the note that when Trump wrote to the New York State Assembly back in 91, that was reported in the New York Daily News, and I wanted to kind of look at that and see what was the date on that. Just sort of give myself a sense of when did he write that, and I mean, I don't know if it says. Yeah, it just again puts it as a 1991. Okay, so that's of no use. I was just sort of trying to find out how early in 1991 was. Did we really have returning Gulf War I veterans? I don't think there was any. I'm sure there were some people disabled by action there, but anyway, I was just curious about that. All right. Moving right along from there then, Donald Trump is still a disgusting person. And we haven't gotten to all the reasons why just yet. But that was definitely a lead-off item. Let me get to another one that we hinted at earlier on in the show while Greg was on. Let's see, where did I put this? Here we are. In this case, we'll be going to, maybe you've heard of this place, dailycoast.com, our own Scout Finch, now known by her real name of Jen Hayden. This was a great story. Trump collected $17 million in claims after a hurricane. Staff remembers, though, only slight damage. We're talking about Mar-a-Lago, the jewel of the crown of Florida properties for Donald Trump and his part-time home. This would be back in 2005, I guess, post-Hurricane Wilma, which I remember a little bit about it. It wasn't, it wasn't Katrina or anything, but it was a fairly serious storm. I think, was it Wilma or I don't know. I lose track of which storms in particular do damage where, but at any rate, most of these things track the same way, and so I don't know whether this was one that came up the coast or made it all the way to like the Charleston area or not. But anyway, I just thought this story was pretty interesting. I mean, you should put this in the same file, put a copy of this one in the file with the 40 Wall Street post 9/11 story. Remember that is the property that he claimed to have suffered either, and we're still not clear about this, damage to the building, or that he was charging the city money for, I guess, what he would say is losses incurred in opening up space in the building, either for tenancy or storage, depending on what day he's telling the story, for other people who were tenants in other buildings that were damaged on 9/11. And he made the claim for a considerable amount of cash. I mean, I think we're only talking about $500,000, though, based on the idea that, and remember, he was drawing this from a pool meant to help small business owners who were impacted by 9/11. And, of course, his big claim to fame is that he is a big business owner. But when it comes to finding free money, he reminds me a lot of that guy. You sometimes see him do the infomercials on weekend morning TV with the question marks all over his suit. What's that guy's name again? And he's all about telling people how to get free money from the government. And that's what Donald Trump is about. So when it comes time, if there's money to be had for small businesses, then he needs to reconfigure as a small business. So what he does is he says, well, I don't know whether he's storing anything for anybody or not. It doesn't matter to him. He's just going to say he was at 40 Wall Street. But then he says, well, I'm a small business. I qualify because, after all, how many people do I have working at 40 Wall Street? I own the building. So there's a manager and a staff of about 5 people. So for that purpose, that business is just 40 Wall Street management business. It has nothing to do with the Trump organization or anything. It's a subsidiary all to itself, small enough to qualify under the rules. Give me the cash. And people do it. They gave him the cash. Why? Because he says he's Donald Trump, and you should just give. I think that's what's behind this one too. This really, the Mar-a-Lago piece is one of the most, and I love using this term for these things, crystalline examples of the very kind of, quote, waste, fraud, and abuse. Whenever a Republican says, I know how we can cut the budget, I know how we can make things work, I know how we can get away with spending less money on this without hurting benefits, or I can reform this entitlement without cutting benefits. I will just get rid of waste, fraud, and abuse. You might never really ask yourself, what does that mean? Our listeners always ask themselves, what does that mean? But if you're somebody else, you might never ask yourself, what does that mean? And if you've never thought about it, you could hand such a person this article, and I think they would say, that's what we're talking about. Although very often other people would say, well, no, because he's white, so that's not it. And then you will find out a little bit more about them. So what's the story? As Jen has it here, Donald Trump collected $17 million in insurance. Okay, so is it money from the government? No. But even worse, I guess, because they had every opportunity to check out what it was. But now I understand easier how he could get this money out of them. So let me see. Is there any state money at all involved in this? Collected $17 million in insurance on his Mar-a-Lago property after Hurricane Wilma, but staffers can't recall any extensive damage to the property. In a deposition from an unrelated case, and this is how most stuff on him comes out, he's pretty good at just straight up lying / covering up in whatever channel he's working in. The problem is when he's asked in another venue about some other issue, and then he'll just say whatever needs to be said to win that case, and it's totally contradictory to what he needs to win this other case, and he thinks no one will ever find it because I'll have the record sealed or something. Okay. So, in a deposition in an unrelated case, Donald Trump talked about the payment and the so-called extensive damage at his Florida resort. Now, this from the Associated Press. Landscaping, roofing, walls, painting, leaks, artwork in the, the great tapestries, tiles, Spanish tiles, the beach, the erosion, he said, of the storm damage. It's still not what it was. Trump's description of extensive damage, though, does not match those of Mar-a-Lago members and even Trump loyalists. And that was, I guess, supposed to be his description of what had happened, what the damage was at Mar-a-Lago. He couldn't even really put together a coherent sentence about that. He just listed a bunch of things that could get damaged. Did they? The point is, I listed them. In an interview about this estate's history, Trump's longtime former, really, is he former? Butler, the racist butler, everyone remembers Anthony Senecal, recalled no catastrophic damage. What? You're fired, you dumb bastard. What's he doing to me? He said Hurricane Wilma, the last of the string of storms that barreled through in 2004 and 2005, flattened trees behind Mar-a-Lago, but the house itself only lost some roof tiles. That house has never been seriously damaged, said Senecal, discussing Mar-a-Lago's luck with hurricanes. I was there for all of them. And again, he probably was, at that point, being asked to describe how sturdy, stable, what have you, is Mar-a-Lago. Isn't it a great investment because it'll never be, even can survive almost anything. It's been through hurricane after hurricane. You can't kill Mar-a-Lago. It's an enduring landmark. Oh, well, actually, I was asking about the damage for insurance purposes. Oh, well, in that case, we were destroyed. All right, back to Jen's narrative here. In fact, and this is a great point, only 2 weeks after Hurricane Wilma allegedly did $17 million in damage, the Trumps held Donald Trump Jr.'s 2005 wedding there. And why not? Because it's in great shape. Here's a nice, beautiful photo of Donald Trump Jr.'s wedding at Mar-a-Lago. And you can see there's a roof on the building and everything. There's a beautiful pool. They're all around. Everything looks fantastic. Except it sucks. It's disgusting. But okay, whatever. Palm Beach building department records, and this is another key piece of evidence, show no permits for construction on that scale after the storms. Permits reflected smaller projects, including installation of new grease traps in the kitchen and tree trimming along the road. The only permits that appeared hurricane-related were for $3,000 in repairs to storm-damaged outdoor lighting and the vacuuming of sand from the property's beachfront pool. Likewise, records of the city's Landmarks and Preservation Commission reflected no repair work conducted following the 2004 and 2005 hurricane seasons. Remember, Mar-a-Lago is an historic building, it is considered, in Palm Beach, having been built. But was it Marjorie Merriweather Post who built that? I can't recall the particulars of its history, but he was after it because it was an old money historic property. So in order to do anything to that property, you got to deal with the city's Landmark and Preservation Commission. If you had $17 million in damage to a historic landmark, you'd have, and you intended to repair it, which is what the insurance money would be about, somebody would have a record of that. Jen says, not a lot of work permits for $17 million in damage. Read the full report, she suggests, over at the Associated Press. I'm not certain how long that piece is, but I think you get a taste for what was going on here. And you might ask yourself, why did the insurance company pay? Ordinarily, I would guess, when I thought this was a government waste, fraud, and abuse piece, I originally thought that it would be government bureaucrats he would be leaning on. But in this case, I guess even if it's simply insurance and nothing more, he'd be leaning on, corporate bureaucrats at the insurance. And so I wonder who his insurer was. That'd be a good question, too. I mean, maybe the AP story has got that. But I think we can move on to different stories. Although, gosh, this looks chock full. So I will review it offline and see if there's anything else that we can add to this story tomorrow. Because looks like a lot of information here. But I think Jen got the key stuff. But so how do you get something like this? If you have damage, I don't know if you're ever going to have $17 million of damage to anything you own. But if you have damage of any kind during a hurricane, if you're I don't know, probably a lot of you have been through this, roof damage, water damage, what have you, from a hurricane. I've never made a claim for hurricane damage to insurance. Hell, I don't even remember making any claims to insurance. I stop insuring my place and roll the dice, right? Free ride on all the rest of you guys. Okay. Well, anyway, if you make a claim, I assume they say that the general MO here is that they say, you go ahead and get an estimate for fixing the roof. And maybe they say, check in with us, show us the estimate or whatever. But basically, it's, provided it's a decent ballpark price, go ahead, get the roof fixed, and either pay for it, or I suppose maybe if you're a really good insurance guy, he could say, give me the estimate, and we'll pay you on the estimate, and then, talk about the difference later. But I would assume that the general MO is, go ahead, have the repair done, pay for it out of pocket, and then send us the bills, and we'll reimburse you what we can reimburse you based on your insurance, and it goes from there. But so the next question is, how does Donald Trump get the insurance company to part with $17 million? Or does he? Actually, now I'm looking. It does say, the headline is, Trump collected $17 million in claims. So I guess that they eventually do part with that. It's not just that he claims $17 million and they send him some other number. So how does he get $17 million out of an insurance company, which you would think would be even more tight-fisted with that money than perhaps a government entity handing out emergency relief funds? How do they justify cutting a $17 million check if they don't have a pile of receipts in front of them? There's a couple of possible answers to that. One is a bunch of fake receipts, which I would think if that happened in 2005, 2006, you'd think that there would be a lawsuit somewhere along the line about this. I guess the other possibility is that Trump files the claim and their usual process kicks in and they say, go ahead and do the work, and then we'll reimburse you when we see receipts for the work. I could see, did Donald Trump himself then, give me the number. I'm going to call the executives there. Did he ever at any point call the insurance execs and say, this is Donald Trump. You're driving me crazy here. You're wasting my time. You know how these things go. This is extensive damage. $17 million in damage to a property like Mar-a-Lago. This is not just some schmuck's home here. I'm not going to go out and get a roofing contractor and pay it out of pocket and then ask you to reimburse me. I'm haggling with vendors right now. I'm paying them right now. I got people moving in and out. I'm dealing with them, negotiating over prices. I can't get a fix on this stuff. You know how I do business. You know how business really works. I'm Donald Trump. I'm a billionaire. I'm not going to cheat you for the $17 million. I mean, I have insurance for a reason, but $17 million is pocket change to me. I'm not going to chisel you for $17 million. I'm Donald Trump. I got a name in this community. I would never do that to you. I got to have this cash flowing to make things move. Okay, Mr. Trump. Okay, Mr. Trump. Hold on, calm down. I'm going to pull my accounts in. I can insure Mar-a-Lago at the drop of a hat for half this price down the street from you. Okay. Don't get excited. I'm not, I don't see any proof of it, and I don't know if it's in the AP article either. But I think it would be a ripe avenue for inquiry. And also, by the way, a ripe avenue for inquiry, who is this insurer? And is it a public company? And does anybody who's a stockholder want to say, what? How did we lose $17 million on this thing, by the way? Can we have some answers about that? I don't know what the statute of limitations is there, but somebody might have some questions. Does it say anywhere what who his insurer is? That's a good question. Well, I don't see anything in my quick scan of the AP piece. I'll see if I can figure it out later on. Oh, here we are. The insurance adjuster who assessed the insurance claim, Hank Stein of Vericlaim Incorporated, V-E-R-I, Veri, like verify, Vericlaim Incorporated, said there had been damage to Trump's golf course in West Palm Beach and damage to Mar-a-Lago's roof and landscaping, but he could not remember details. Trump declined to provide the AP with records about the insurance claim or answer specific questions about damage at Mar-a-Lago. Stein, who has since left Vericlaim for another firm, said he remembered water damage from rain after windows to an observation deck atop the mansion blew open. I wish I could give you some more information on the breakdown, he said. Under local rules, major repairs would have required Trump to request a permit and pay permit fees. If such work were performed without permits, that could have avoided as much as $450,000 in fees, but would likely have been illegal. How nice. Let's see. If there were $17 million in damage, we sure as hell would have known about it, says a Mr. Frank, who I guess is on the Historic Properties Commission here. So still no indication here. Let's see. Much of Trump's property insurance business has long been handled by Pamela Newman, a leading insurance broker for Aon, AON Risk Services, Inc. Neither Newman nor Aon would, and here it's all capitalized, I don't know if it's Aon or Aon, would discuss the case with AP. So, I got a lot of questions. And they'll remain unanswered because I think we've mined this story for what we can today. I will review this. I will review it. I will not review it. I probably won't. But maybe we'll come back to discussing it later on this week. Okay, let's see. Some other things that are going to have to be explored here. Let's go here. I sort of hinted at this as a promise for later in the show. Let's deliver. Michael Gross's latest entry here at the Daily Beast, which I told you was a bit of a follow-up. I would consider it a follow-up to his piece, which we read as backgrounder, prelude to Swedish Jewfish's We All Knew About the Trafficking Inside the, whatever it was, the Secret World of Trump Modeling, Part 1. I forget exactly how the title ran, but basically the Trump model management story. And Michael Gross was the one who introduced us to the John Casablancas figure, to the, what's the other guy's name? Paolo Zampelli, was that his name? I've probably destroyed his name as well. But other guys who, like Trump, just sort of out of thin air started, in some cases, kind of second-tier modeling agencies. So John Casablancas was a top star of it with his elite modeling agency. And we got a lot of hints, as I recall, from Gross's first piece, and I should see if I can find it in my archive here, because his title, I thought, hinted at something a little darker than the piece actually delivered right off the bat. I thought that, I wonder if I can find him by his name here. I don't know how. Yeah, the Pocket's archive search is a little odd here. Let me see if I left his story in the list and didn't archive it, possibly. But as my recollection is that, here we are. Let's see. Did we have the Gross party, Gross's thing here? He was hinting at what he called model parties. And he didn't really deliver on that story, I thought, but this one gets more to that point. So let's take a look at that one. But think back to the model management and Trump's interest in, for instance, owning multiple beauty pageants. Remember how Hillary Clinton hinted he liked to hang around beauty pageants? Now we're getting into this kind of a story. This piece is called Inside Donald Trump's One-Stop Parties. I'll tell you about that reference in a second. Inside Donald Trump's one-stop parties, attendees recall cocaine and very young models. Well, what do you know about that? One-stop parties, by the way, a reference to Leonardo DiCaprio's characterization of Trump's modeling agency, the Trump Model Management, and the parties that they used to throw as one-stop date shopping parties, essentially. And I think that's actually quoted later on in the story. So if I've mangled that one, we'll get it clarified. So here we are. Inside Donald Trump's one-stop parties, attendees recall cocaine and very young models. Subheader, I was there to party myself It was guys with younger girls. Sex, a lot of cocaine, top shelf liquor, but no smoking. Donald Trump didn't approve of cigarettes. That's okay, that's interesting. And I can sympathize with that as well. It'll make it makes the apartments where you're holding the parties smell like cigarettes forever. But then again, Donald Trump doesn't approve of liquor either, but he made sure that it was there. And P.S. I never used cocaine. So there you go. The morals of Donald J. Trump, Michael Gross writes, as a longtime model lover, he's no model lover, but he is a lover of models. Well, an admirer? I don't know. Anyway, and then a modeling agency owner, were forged in another era, the morals were, one in which young girls were used as a sort of currency between men doing business with one another. And I should just stop there. I think we all get the point, but I'm not going to stop there. But it couldn't be put any better. Using girls as currency. And I mean girls here too, because some of the girls in this story are 15. But hey, I'm not judging. I'm just reading. But you also often have that come up a lot. Well, it's from another time. And, he's 70. That sometimes applies, right? He never really caught on with the whole political correctness. He's from another era. Okay, but he's running in this one. It's not a time that Trump, who once blew up gossip reporters' phones to dish on his own sexual exploits, real and imagined, is eager to remember now. But after I wrote for the Daily Beast earlier this year about the parties he hosted in the 1990s, oh good, that'll give me a link to the party. Yeah, there we are. Donald Trump used model parties to seal deals, industry sources say. That's the story I think that I used as prelude to Swedish Jewfish's story. But we never really heard about what the model parties were. So, after Michael Gross, wrote about it earlier this year, the parties where, quote, his wealthy friends, high rollers from his Atlantic City casinos, and potential Trump condominium buyers, that's an interesting twist, could meet models from second-tier agencies. Several men who attended those parties at the Plaza Hotel emerged to share scandalous specifics about Trump's presence and behavior at events where illegal drugs and young women were not just present, but, as he says, passed around and used. That's his phrasing. Passed around and used. Trump's assistant referred a request for comment about the two men's claims detailed below to his campaign, which didn't respond to several inquiries. How does Hope Hicks do it? I don't know. I've been covering Trump since 1985, when I worked for the New York Times' women's pages. I did not even realize that they had women's pages, and I don't know if they still call them that. I doubt it. He endorsed one of my books about real estate and was a character in two more of them. He talked to me about sex and substances and the substance of the arena in which he made his name, real estate. I published all of it. In 1999, he told me that in 1995, he'd been worth about, can you want to guess his net worth in 1995? Negative $900 million. I only wish one day I could be worth negative $900 million the way he's worth negative $900 million. When I owe $900 million, I don't have a limo. I don't have a penthouse suite. I don't have an airline. Nothing. I don't know. You want to know how Hope Hicks does it? How does he do it? So, in 1995, he told them, I'm worth about negative $900 million. I didn't have the chops to think to ask for his tax returns. I also wrote a book about the modeling industry. We heard a lot about that one. And heard stories about Trump, but didn't write them because he wasn't important in it. Just another, and this is, it's not important in the modeling story, but it's an important part of the Donald Trump story. Listen to this. I heard stories about him. I didn't write about them because he wasn't important in them. Just another rich guy buying a date farm. Perhaps for his friends, perhaps for himself. This wasn't pejorative. It's just how things were. And here, parenthetically, Leonardo DiCaprio, at the height of his, this is what they call it, pussy posse fame, thanked Trump for offering one-stop date shopping. That's about as sleazy as it gets. But here's some more. Now, those stories seem to matter more, and so I spoke in recent days with two Trump pals, both reluctant to talk about the man they once partied hard with, who's now the Republican nominee to be president of the United States. In that capacity, Trump has vowed to sue people who have come forward in recent weeks with allegations about his bad behavior. One of the two men I spoke with, a fashion photographer, requested anonymity because he has fathered several children, that's an interesting way of putting it, since his Trump days and doesn't want his past dredged up. There's no upside for me, he says. Side note here, the man obviously is not identified in the story, but you all remember Paolo Zampoli, whose name I was trying to get right earlier in the show. Paolo Zampoli also founded a modeling agency in New York City and definitely was palling around with Donald Trump at the time. And as I recall, was he himself a photographer? I can't remember exactly whether he was a photographer turned modeling impresario or not. But then there was also the guy who wasn't the guy, and I thought for a while it might have been him, but maybe I'm confusing him with somebody else, but the photographer, or the person who introduced Melania to Donald was also a photographer, right? And then there's and I don't know whether it was the same guy who introduced the two of them, who also was the one who booked the shoot that was made famous most recently by the New York tabloids, the nude photo shoot that she did. Well, anyway, he knows a lot of fashion photographers. So I don't know that this is that any of these people, even if they are all different people, I don't even know anymore. They all have similar names. Are candidates for filling in the blanks of this one guy who's got anonymity here. Does Melania's Wikipedia profile give us the name of the guy who introduced them? I don't know. But, yeah, well, I want to look that up, as well at some point. Yeah, how come that's not, I would have thought that would have been, closer. Or a more prominent feature of the Wikipedia piece. Maybe I can just find out. Here we are. Melania Trump introduced. Oh no, I want who introduced the two of them. I can't seem to find that now. Oh, well, it's not close at hand. Anyway, it's not as important to try to figure out who this guy is as, of course, to hear his story. So back to that. There's no upside for me, he says. And reminder that Paolo Zampoli, or whoever he is, ended up working for Donald Trump and selling the top condos, the penthouse units in his New York places and also down in Sao Paulo, Brazil. So, yeah, there'd be no upside for him. The other man, though, is on the record. Well, you'll read his words, Michael writes. Both confirmed that Trump, as I've reported, used to host parties in suites at the Plaza Hotel when he owned it, where young women and girls were introduced to older, richer men. This is hardly aberrant behavior. It may be abhorrent behavior. It's just hardly aberrant in the modeling business. Indeed, it is the standard operating procedure, which, if you're still wondering why a quote-unquote real estate mogul would start a modeling agency and buy several beauty pageants, I think you're probably starting to get the picture. But both men also put Donald Trump in the room with cocaine, very young women, and underage girls, and rich old men there to, pardon my language, and I'll pardon it, but I'm not going to be able to repeat it, but he says if the Times can say pussy on its front page, then I guess we can say it on the radio. I can say this. Rich old men there to, I can't say it. F them. I'm still restricted there. I'm sorry, Ivanka. I really am, because your mother raised you well, he says, and I can't blame you for supporting your father, even if he did give at least his blessing when you were 15 and signed on as a model yourself with Elite, the hard-partying high-end agency founded by notorious teen effer John Casablancas. But here's the sad truth. Your dad's not a dog. He's a pig. Wow. The photographer says he attended Trump's parties with one of the owners of the hair salon, Pierre Michel, that operated in both the plaza and Trump Tower. Again, a little bit of that vertical integration thing going on here. And again, another piece of the puzzle, if you're still trying to figure it out, why I keep insisting that both Trump world and the alt-right, with which it meshes so beautifully, are in fact sex cults. Part of the reason, why is Trump world a sex cult? Oh, well, I operate I'm going to run the franchise on the hair salon in the two buildings, and side benefits. All I have to do is be completely loyal to Donald Trump, and he'll set me up in a place where I can make a killing in business, and he'll get me laid with models. That's all that's going on here. The salon owner, Pierre good Lord, Oaknin, Ouknine, Ouak, and then 9, basically, in English at the end. Oaknine? You tell me. Anyway, doesn't matter. It's all in writing. He says his memories of those plaza parties vanished after a recent surgery. That is super convenient. It was for an ingrown toenail, but whatever. The point is, the memories vanished. But the photographer's memories are crystal clear. And he might even have pictures, for all we know. Trump would take over suites on the corners of his hotel with views of Central Park and Grand Army Plaza, not to mention lots to look at inside and wow his guests. The attraction, for the men, obviously, was young girls assuming they'd get somewhere, and that's quoted, young girls assuming they'd get somewhere by joining the party, the photographer says. Of course, it never happens. Young models were attracted to the fetes with a simple time-tested pitch. You'll meet rich guys who will help you, says the photographer. It was networking, but on a weird, bizarre scale. The girls, whose primary interest was networking, right? All the kids are networking these days. The girls were as young as 15, he says, and, quote, over their heads. They had no idea, and they ended up in situations. There was always dramas because the men threw money and drugs at them to keep them enticed. It's based on power and dominating girls who can't push back and can be discarded. There's always someone to pick them back up. Nobody wants to call home and say, help me. Trump would go from room to room, said the photographer, who added that I was there to party myself. It was guys with younger girls, sex, a lot of cocaine, top shelf liquor, but no smoking. Remember, Trump didn't approve of cigarettes. This other stuff, hey, whatever. Those men at the parties often knew each other. It's a small community, the photographer says. They exchanged information, facilitated each other. Trump was in and out. He'd wander off with a couple girls. I saw him. He was getting laid like crazy. Trump was at the heart of it. He loved the attention, and in private, he was a total effing beast. Phew. Well, my goodness, I'll fan myself there. But that's interesting. They exchanged information, facilitated each other. And it's probably as much in business as this sex trafficking, I would imagine. They probably all thought, this is the way business is done. And business was probably done there. I mean, how did this guy get the franchise on the hair salon in these places? I don't know which came first. Was he at the sex parties first? Or did he get an invite there because he agreed to pay an exorbitant rent for his hair salon license or what have you, the franchise in there? Trump himself nodded to the life when his own daughter began modeling. saying, I am only modestly in favor of this because I understand that life, I've heard, that life is a very fast life, and that at that age, it is always a risky proposition. He would know about that life. He was with other men's daughters. I'm effing models. With his daughter, okay, well, understandably, I would think it would be bizarre if he went any other direction. But he very nearly did. I mean, he could have signed her with anybody. He signed her with a pedophile. I don't know why. Andy Lucchese, the second man I spoke to, was and remains a male model. He was identified to me by a modeling executive as a frequent visitor to the Trump model salons. I don't want to get him in trouble, Lucchese says of Trump. I like Donald. I respect the guy. People should want to know about Jeffrey Epstein and Bill Clinton, referring to the billionaire pedophile who, in fact, palled around with both Clinton and Trump. Thank you very much. And of course, those of you listening likely know that there's some court dates set for December, as I understand it, in the lawsuit against Donald Trump in connection with Jeffrey Epstein and his alleged rape of a then 13-year-old girl. But hey, we have to wait for the courts to sort that one out before we can say much more about that one. I ask, Michael continues with his article, in talking with Andy Lucchese, if he's equating Trump's parties with Epstein's debauches. Hell no, Lucchese says. No, I imagine they did not reach that level. But they're not church gatherings either, I would guess. Lucchese had been described to me by the modeling executive as an organizer of Trump's parties, one of several who wrangled models to them. Asked about that description, Lucchese says that, quote, the parties weren't like an organized once-a-week thing. But was he wrangling models for Trump? A lot of people would say that, Lucchese allows, adding that he thought Trump's motive was a desire to open a modeling agency of his own, which he eventually did. So therefore what, it's harmless? No. I don't know. Okay, whatever. Lucchese's recollection of the parties dovetails with the photographer's account. There was cocaine around. I never saw him do that. Donald Trump does not do cocaine. He's in control of himself. All right, I might even be able to accept that. I would think it would be a little bit weird if he would swear off drinking, and I don't think I've ever heard anybody say that's not true, but not cocaine. But I don't know. People are weird, so what do I know? I got no idea. He sniffs a lot, but I don't think that's cocaine. Does Howard Dean think so? Yeah, he does. Is Howard Dean a doctor? He is. He's not my doctor. But okay. Maybe he's right. I got no idea. Girls? The article continues. Well, of course, Lucchese says. But I never knew him as one of those guys buying apartments for girls from Estonia. Parenthetically, Michael adds, though he did marry a model from Slovenia. Yeah. He did do that, didn't he? Anyway, but did he have sex with his female party guests? Lucchese says vaguely, so he's a man with a woman. The amour, right? Come on. Oh, it's romantic. No. How old were they? A lot of girls, 14, look 24. That's as juicy as I can get, he says. I never asked how old they were. I just partook. I did partake in activities that would be controversial, too. Wow. Well, I mean, you can't expect him to say too much to incriminate himself, but I mean, gosh, if you don't get the idea at this point, geez, well, a lot of girls who are 14 look 24. I don't know. But then I love his excuse, too, by way of excuse. I don't ask, I just partake. So I don't know for sure, so I'm not as bad. I guess that's the excuse you give to yourself. I don't ask, I just partook. What do I know? Lucchese adds that he's glad nobody cares about what he did back then. I had so much fun. My body is paying for it now. Yeah, right. That's terrible. Your body is paying for the fun you had. I'd be interested in having your body pay for the damage to the other people is more to my interest. But okay. And he's not even running for president. It actually says that in the article. I'm returning to the reading now. Here's how Trump described himself. We're almost at the end of this installment. Here's how Trump described himself, recalling his days as a young bachelor in Manhattan in an interview for one of my books. Trump told me that consequence-free promiscuity was then his second business. Remember that? If I hadn't got married, who knows what would have happened. You had drugs, women, and booze all over the effing place. As a young man on the make in New York, he'd joined the private Le Club. You'll remember that from his previous installment too. It was effing wild, he told me. The most beautiful women I've ever seen in my life were at Le Club. I had seen some incredible women going into Le Club with rich guys, and I said, boy, that's a cool life. P.S. I want to be president of the United States. Well, that's actually the end of the installment, and a lot of times Michael Gross is holding something here because he drops at the most awkward times. So he's definitely doing a great job stringing me along on this one. I thought it was very important that you get this update. If all of you, including me, still waiting for part 2 plus on We All Knew About the Trafficking, this I think is a taste of what we're waiting for, and it's really it's an amazing thing. This existed. I mean, I think that's part of the real awfulness of it is that we all knew that it existed. Like the title said, we all knew about the trafficking. But gosh, it's certainly hard to prove ever, because there's so much of it that has there's escape clauses built right into it. Besides, of course, you can't get around maybe the statutory rape problem, but in days gone by, I didn't know how she looked like she was actually an excuse that she could get away with judges, cops, especially cops that you maybe for some reason felt compelled to take $150,000 of somebody else's money and give it to them. Might excuse certain things. I don't know. I'm just saying there's a lot of weirdness going on. And as I've said before, I mean, if you thought I was just kidding when I said that Trump world and the alt-right is a sex cult, then I gotta remind you, I'm kind of actually quite serious about that. I mean, think about what this comes down to. I was particularly interested in the idea of potential buyers of Trump Tower condos being invited to the parties. Essentially, what's Donald Trump doing here? I find rich guys who also think, boy, that's a cool life. And maybe you can't get away with the Le Club thing because you're married for whatever, or maybe you're looking to get married. I don't know. And the idea that, or maybe that for whatever reason, the Le Club thing is too much for you, or even if it isn't, you just like it. That Donald Trump will say, I'm building Trump Tower. We could have basically a gorgeous looking, high class looking Fifth Avenue skyscraper apartment, that on the outside has all the respectability and class that he thinks comes along with gold plating everything. Invalid assumption, but whatever. And inside, though, it could be a total effing frat house. And we can do this. I can build this. This can work. And to convince you, I mean, if you're thinking about it, right? Are you thinking about buying a unit in Trump Tower at my place? Come to my party at the Plaza. I'll get you laid by a model. And we could do this all the time. All the time. Just buy in. Come and be part of this. Is my Le Club. Trump Tower. Buy yourself a condo here and you'll get this. Be a regular occurrence. Right here in town. Safe. Your neighbors are the people at the sex party, not your wives. Your wives stay home. Or if you're looking for one, I'll bring you models. Think of it. That's why, to this day, Trump Tower, I keep reminding you, is a billionaire's, and sometimes that's in quotes, frat house. That's why Stewie Rara has property that has a place there. It's why these other Russian-connected mobsters have places there. It's why even when we were just looking at the relatively benign world of the Trump Foundation and Farenthold's investigation into all the, and the Charles, whatever it was, Evans Foundation people, right? How did he find Charles Evans Foundation to get the money from them? And I looked into that and who's heading it up and look at the trustees from it. And Charles Evans is his pals, they're all married to models. All of them turn out to be married to a series of models The standard joke of trading them in for a younger model, double entendre intended, is entirely true. And these guys lived that life, and he was the one supplying them with it. And that's why they stayed in this dump of a place that had no class to it whatsoever. It wasn't about that. It was about buying into the sex club, the sex cult, the little club on a grand scale, and a comfortable place where fat old guys could still get laid by models because this guy over here is going to make it happen. Why do I keep comparing that to the alt-right? Well, here I'll just jump up to remind you of, I mean, it was pretty much the same thing. You remember that snippet we found of the description of the Breitbart party that was at the Breitbart embassy, as they call it? That's Steve Bannon's place, or the place that he claims is his, but it's really owned by that mysterious Egyptian politician / businessman who, for whatever reason, lets Breitbart and his acolytes use this thing and live in it as if it's their home and publish out of there, and then have parties during CPAC like the one that was described here. You remember this whole thing? The email bearing the subject line, the Breitbart party was the sickest S ever. A guest describing it like this: it was like the party embodied the spirit of the man. I read it just like this to you. Too intense, too drunk, too virile, too extreme. There was such a vibe at this house, so un-Washington. It was sick and virile and intense and drunk and loud and horny in a way that seemed like a real tribute to the man himself. Everyone was good-looking and young. It was slightly frat, but definitely in the spirit of CPAC. How could that be? Anything could happen at this party. A stabbing, an orgy, a tent revival, dancing, levitating, crying. One of the bathrooms has a glass door. It was very eyes wide shut. Breitbart. It was really sinister, hard to explain. It was like there was a full moon, but there wasn't. Maybe there's always a full moon over Breitbart. That's not a sex cult? Buy into the alt-right. Come on, work for us, work for Breitbart, sacrifice, give us your soul, we'll handle it. Why? Why them? Why Breitbart? Why Trump world? Because they're the sex cult, right? And in Trump world, buy in, but actually literally buy in, buy a condo here, and we'll let you into the club, lay club, at home. Buy into Trump world. It's prosperity gospel, wherein the worthy get rich, yes, but get laid as well. Don't think you can manage that? You're not that kind of a guy? Don't worry about it. We'll get you laid. You don't want to go to the club and be seen there? We'll do it here at a Trump property. We'll bring the girls to you. Oh my God. I can do whatever I want. I can get whoever I want. Over on the alt-right side, it's political ideology wherein the politics justify the idea of alphas like you, people who are willing to take those risks, are going to get laid. If you're a nerd and you can't manage it, but you want to be an alpha anyway, and you got the chops to write for us, we'll get you laid. We'll have CPAC parties and bring in everybody you couldn't even imagine, and we'll make sure that you do. How did those two worlds happen to collide? How did they happen to mesh so well? Just let yourself fall into it. Look around you. You're thinking of working for Breitbart. You're thinking of buying into Trump Tower. Look around. All the other people here. It's worked for all of them. It's a little bit like Scientology, right? I know it sounds crazy, but look at the success they're having. Do you want this? What have you got to lose? Sign your name here. Your dreams can come true. Think about the way the alt-right has been described in the last couple of days, the way I described it to you, where the biggest virtue is to treat other people horribly. Plus, on the side, after you vent yourself, you get laid by a model. Or, if you're gay, Milo sets you up. No problem. It's like Westworld, but for real. That's all it is. You do whatever the hell you want. You unload on whoever the hell you want to because you hate that. I've always wanted to just let that guy have it. Well, I can do it now. And we'll protect you for doing it. And in addition to which, we'll reward you. We'll get you laid. Unbelievable. No wonder these two worlds They couldn't hardly help avoid when there's no way they could have stayed apart. We're wondering, scratching our heads, how did these two worlds collide? How did they mesh so well? They were designed this way. This was supposed to happen. It was part of the plan. Well, that sets us up nicely for the rest of the week, don't you think? Of course, now it's almost time to hand things back to the guys at Netroots Radio for the after show. God only knows what they're going to be talking to you about that. Wow. But there's more to all of this, and there are more stories that we'll have to add to the growing list of Trump scandals. I don't think we even got to all of them today, but we got a week's worth and more. We got a year's worth, really, coming up. Plenty more, like I said, where that came from, but can't squeeze anything else in there now. Anything we need to tease you with and let you take a look at on your own before we return to the air tomorrow? Well, we'll certainly be doing more discussion of the foreign fundraising scandal later. I think that's the one that'll end up having the legs. But man, I wish that was different. I see Athena sees it, right? Just like having listened to this description. Holy crap. Well, she says holy ass word, but you know, you're allowed to do that on Twitter. And they want to turn America into this, and Christians support it. Gee whiz, man. I don't know. I guess they do. And I don't know whether it's because they think they're going to extract their kind of prosperity, or whether they think finally we'll be able to have some of this, which we've denied to ourselves on moral grounds all this time, but maybe this will finally allow us to partake in some. I really don't know. I really don't know what the end game is here. Lots more to discuss, of course. Lots more to pick up on that's not just exclusively Trump, and a lot more things that are even outside of immediate electoral issues that I got to share with you. Boy, I don't know. I guess I got to sort of plan this out a little bit better. But I knew I would get carried away with this story. I don't see how I could do it any other way. And I'm not sorry. I do not apologize for it. People have got to begin thinking about this in these terms. I don't know whether his ultimate defeat at the polls in November is really going to rid us of this guy. And I mean, one of the other big discussion points of today that I didn't even touch is that Trump now, I guess this is supposed to be the opening salvo in the possible Trump TV saga. Trump says he's going to launch a nightly Facebook Live show. I don't know that he's really got the time or interest in actually maintaining that. He Palinized himself entirely with this thing. She at least waited to lose the election first. I don't know how this is going to go. This just feels like flop material, but it's worth keeping an eye on. And I guess maybe you don't want to let your kids watch if that's all eventually going to be about this. I don't know whether he compartmentalizes his life or not. I got no idea. You would think so, because we don't know these stories about him until just now. But then again, I mean, he signed, I'll put it this way. When Ivanka wanted to model, he signed him up with Casablancas, the pedophile. He's not compartmentalizing that. I don't know. Anyway, stay tuned. Of course, plenty more to come after this on Netroots Radio. The after show guys ready to take over with the following news items. CNN's irresponsible Trump coverage has earned it over $100 million, more than forecast. What do you know? Project Veritas, the pro-Trump rat-effing organization run by James O'Keefe, quietly employs a convicted felon who tried to blackmail David Letterman. And senior rat-effing Grandmaster Roger Stone ponders
from Daily Kos Radio,
life after
on
Trump.
NetrootsRadio.com. You have been listening to the Kagro in the Morning Show
with David Waldman.
Well, it's not all splashy scandals. On the last half, they'll talk with Chris Reeves, Tom Servo 433, on vote-rigging claims made into a high science by Chris Kobach. Why Dred Scott and Hitler citations matter. Obama officially endorses Jay Seide for Kansas 03 U.S. House seat, and much more. Next.